Congratulations to both teams for making it to the Octofinals of the NDT. Extremely close and really, really good debate.
Yep, really.
It was a 3-2 decision for the affirmative from all fours. I have a request. Can you mute the microphone for a second? I have a job that I would like to keep, but I want to say something to y'all that I don't think it's I'll be quick because I know you all have to prep. And long and short of it is I'm not even really sure what the AF does, to be perfectly honest. I think you all spend so much time trying to say the AF is a multiplicity of things that you never lock in anything. Like you're like, haptic touch. And I'm reading through your cards and I'm reading it, and I just don't get why it's not kind of the two things that I think they're winning that I just don't have an answer to, which is first kind of this resiliency disad argument where like you just create a condition where you can kind of mop up everything and teach people to deal with kind of pain that's coming. But I think they're winning the larger structural impact that if capitalism is going to collapse, and obviously folks are going to be affected, the larger question is kind of how do we orient ourselves? What is our epistemology we use? And they're winning that kind of your resiliency argument is what justifies things like a lack of organization and institution building that provides kind of the casing that allows for your movement to be useful and good. I also just think that at the end of the day that they're right. Like I can vote on presumption. Like I don't know the difference between executive touch and haptic touch by the end of the debate. I think executive touch is a very large amorphous term that you use to apply to a bunch of different stuff. I vote negative because I'm not sure what the AF does. And I think they're winning the resiliency link, and I think they're also winning the localization disad, which I don't think you have really any offense on. I think the strategy for you in the 2AR to get my ballot pretty easily is to go and spend a little bit more time on this affect stuff and make specific arguments to how be like, time out. Like, we are talking about black people can create affect in certain spaces. And regardless, if you agree with everything else they're saying, we know capitalism coming. Niggas still got to find a way to survive, right? We still got to find a way to operate. And I think if you go for those affective arguments in the context just of my ballot, I can vote AF pretty easily because I don't think they really have game on boxing you out of that particular avenue. But as it stands, without a clear explanation of haptic touch, I'm just like, presumption. Good debate, though. I love the 1AC, by the way, too, the reading of it.
Yeah. This debate was brilliant. The app was brilliant. Y'all were brilliant. And y'all really did your thing well. I'm not very good at being concise, and I think all of y'all know that because you've had to sit through me doing this a lot. I ended up thinking you won big chunks of the app, but there were three things that I kind of thought went neg. The first was just a couple link arguments. The kind of facts evidence about black queer kinship networks I felt like was pretty persuasive and a big part of the 2NR. And the 2AR, I feel like, was a good time to kind of get some good things going. You got the start of it going, but I didn't think a full way through. And the other one was just kind of like the governance and institution link. The second was, I agreed with Ben. I thought that there were a series of kind of persuasive solvency arguments in regards to the AF. I think that the AF is really good on kind of like the top level framing of indebtedness. And I think I sat there for a long time because I felt like the 2AR especially was brilliant in kind of tying that together and how the sequencing question worked. But without the ability to really explain kind of how the AF gets there, it was hard for me to kind of win that you did that. If I kind of understood how the AF broke everything down, if I understood how the AF created indebtedness, even just more broadly in debate, not even on kind of a wider scale, I think I'd be pretty sold with the other three. And then finally, I did think they won kind of some of the ableism argument. I can unpack this a whole lot more, and I'm happy to do that. I don't know if it'd be helpful to do that or if y'all would rather kind of get the prepping, but I can kind of...
Yeah, I think that we want some thoughts on ableism stuff, but just because this decision, like the decision time on this was super long, like we do need to start there.
For sure. Yeah, I'm not trying to back out of a decision. I'd love to send y'all I've typed out or talked to.
It's like,
And I've got a whole lot more things I want to say to y'all when you got a moment.
Whites, you may give decisions.
I'll just go.
Well, we all start at D. So.
Yeah. No, I'll go.
Looking at the entire table.
So this might be my last decision, so I hope you don't mind it. It's a little bit long, but I'll try and go through it fairly quickly. I voted F with great hesitancy and respect for Binghamton. Y'all are some truly amazing folk, and I'm proud to have had the privilege to watch you debate throughout your career. I think the question of this debate essentially comes down to permutation for me, and I vote on, I think the net benefit outweighs the risk of a link. There's three issues I think that are important to discuss here, the first of which is ableism, the second of which is the net benefit, and third of which is the link. First is the ableism question. I conclude AF on this question. I think that the 2NR is persuasive, especially in regards to what we owe others, but the AF makes a sensible move here, which is that do we not owe non-normative bodies the possibility of feeling or recognition of individuation as they are? I think this really hurts the explanation of the link to the criticism, because if the AF wins some sort of turn or we solve argument here, which I think they do, there is a world where this argument combined with the permutation becomes more persuasive. But why? So why doesn't the permutation solve this argument? Why doesn't it link to the alternative? There's no theorization of disability in the context of labor in the 2NR, and I think it makes it difficult for me to find this as a persuasive argument in the context of the permutation versus the alt. Second is the net benefit debate. I find the AF explanation throughout to be very persuasive. There's something about the way that Marxists argue that we need a new valuation of labor that's abstracted in such a way that it's hard to understand how we should fundamentally just give a shit about each other. This has a few implications. ASA points that there's a solvency deficit that perm resolves. The question of localized spaces, which maybe is a link, if only to the app but not to the permutation. I think there's a smart re-articulation of Chambers. This makes a preconditioned argument about feeling as prior to organization but not exclusive with it. B is that there's a chance that the governance of the alt becomes coercive and misplaces the unique experience of black, queer, trans, and settled bodies. This is worrisome for me because I think there's a theory of racial capitalism in the 1AC that's consistently extended, that's not a totalizing theory, but rather a reparative one that seeks to find what is lost in traditional Communist Party organization. I also think subpoint C, this means they get double solvency. The question of the links versus the governance Luke link, I understand the AF is squishy on the question of mote quality insurgency, but I also think that it's a false notion to think of mote theorization as sort of a violent insurrection taking to the streets of the neg spins. Not that this is a bad idea, but I don't think it's the right 2NR link to go for it. The facts argument, I think this is where you're most persuasive. This kinship point is very interesting, but I agree that the AF spends too little time engaging with this question, but the Chambers evidence is just so goddamn convincing on the AF being different than the neoliberal focus on the self and the self-care warrant your evidence makes. Their evidence seems to indicate there's a sort of losing yourself in haptic touch that creates a community. That's important for me because it makes me think this debate is less about the AF surviving than a call for what we are doing here and what we should do. There's this framing about the debate versus externalization that's very important to me, and I wish the neg alternative explanation did more than just like a question of epistemology, orientation, and theory, and more like this is the shit that we need to do. I've been involved in this community for about 9 years with a gap in the middle. As a young queer kid, there was definitely massive emotional weight to me about the AF because the fucking rapists that exist throughout this community. As a coach, it's incredibly dispiriting to hear story after story about students and their coercion that essentially plays onto what you can. This essentially could be deadpanned as my bias, but fuck it. I think that the point of ethics on the question that the AF raises is my primary motivation for voting for the perm. In essence, I think that the alt can maybe theorize why feminized labor is devalued, but not what we can do at the local level. This impact term by the AF I think is very strategic because I really do think the permutation solves it, and it means the risk of the link is minimal in comparison to the net benefit.
I should write my joint out like that. That was to the point.
Mr. McBride, I would appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thanks for letting me judge you for starters. I remember the first time at UNLV watching you all thinking how kind of I even saw some of my own paths, seeing some Shanahan show up and some of the old I'm serious. Okay, in simplistic sense, I just thought the link turn outweighed the link. I mean, I basically thought, like, fact is correct, but you've got to win enough of an impact to disprove the app. I agree, a lot of ambiguity with what the app does. I thought more of a distinction with regard to indebtedness, at least inspiring connection. Definitely not spilling up to accountability, changing anything about the executive, changing anything about Hillary, but at the very least, inspiring individuals to believe that they are more than themselves, which is different from individuation. What's interesting to me is, like, whether or not to win this debate, I think Solby is the way to do it. I thought that was one of the best arguments in the round. Is the app really, is it touching touch, or is it telling people that touch is mandatory, which is what sort of Solby seems to get to, that just saying, believe that you are connected with people is not possible for a large group of individuals. And when they can't feel that, ultimately, it makes them blame themselves. They internalize that. And in order to win that argument, I think that there has to be kind of rhetorical moments pulled from the app where it's like the app thinks that they're the only way to understand things like the illicit economy. They're the only way to deal with what's going on in debate, the only way to deal with grooming. Almost sort of it's our way or the highway politics. And winning that argument, and it's tough winning that argument with the way that you're explaining the alternative with CAP, because if it's true that there's a chance that some people won't really feel that engagement, your explanation of the alternative on CAP is essentially just give yourself up to being governed. Well, that also clearly runs the same risk of people thinking, I don't feel like that I can participate in that despite my labor, you know. I don't think that that's something that they've really talked about, but it is something that I had to think about at the end of the debate. So I agree with definitely the other two judges in the sense of hard to understand necessarily what the app does, but do I know that it inspires more connection and at least sort of understanding that we are potentially more than ourselves? Yes. Do I also know that there will be people that won't be able to experience that? Which is why I need you to win that's more and produces a sort of, you're not part of us, you're part of the problem, which is a bigger deal and a reason why we should start thinking in a different way, if that makes any sense. And I could say a lot of other things, but I kind of know where to go.